And so we meet again. I just noticed that box on the floor back there as just before the video started recording, and that was a box I bought a pair of shoes, and my cats covet boxes, so they've been playing with it. So that's the story of the box, in case you were wondering, and I'm sure you were. Now, I've taught Frankenstein in several classes, and I have a deep roots in the book because part of my master's thesis was on the novel. Now, again, I have taught it in several classes. I've taught it in a seated class, and I have taught it online, but not in a literature class. The seated class was a literature class. And when I taught it online, it was in my class called Myth and Monsters, wherein we trace the origins of modern monsters back to their mythic roots. Now, I made loads of videos for that class, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, that I'm sure my students were saying, is she never going to stop? But that was a different focus on the book. And when I was teaching that class, and I am teaching it this semester, and we've already done Frankenstein, the approach towards the book was quite different. And so I'm going to making, in the process of making, different videos for your class. Now, if I were teaching this book in a seated class, what I would do is stand before the class and kind of just go through it almost chapter by chapter and discuss the aspects and the issues therein. So that's kind of what I'm going to do in these videos. Also, if we were in a seated class, the discussions in the classroom would make up the main bulk of the assignments for the novel. I would do a reading quiz, and then we would have a lot of discussion. And when I did teach this book in a seated class, the discussion was very good. And when discussions are very good, then I don't feel the need to do a lot of other writing assignments, etc., with the book. So I think for Frankenstein, we are going to continue on with probably doing a discussion board a week and doing a blog a week. But we'll see how that goes. But on to the book. And that's a lie, because I'm not ready to go on to the book just yet. I wanted to talk a bit about Mary Shelley, even though I did a PowerPoint about her. Mary Shelley was, of course, married to the very famous romantic poet Percy Shelley. She lived kind of in his shadow, even to the point to allowing him to edit the manuscript for Frankenstein, which, when the book came out in 1818, people didn't believe that a woman had written it, and it was because of the style of the writing, which was university level, and women didn't go to universities in those days. This then, in turn, even into the 20th and the 21st century, people were saying, well, she didn't write the book. Percy wrote it and then attributed it to Mary. I don't believe that. We do have extant copies of the novel written in Mary's handwriting and Percy's emendations over the top of those. So I do believe that she wrote the book. Now, Mary herself had a very troubled life. She was married, before she married Percy, her mother died when she was about 11 or 12 days old. And her mother was an early feminist, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who wrote a book called A Vindication of the Rights of Women. And she was an early feminist, as was Mary. And all of this is important, and the reason why I'm going over this, it's important to the book. And also, you should know some about the author who is responsible for writing a book or wrote a book. But at any rate, Mary was an orphan, and a lot of the children in this book are orphans. First of all, Elizabeth is an orphan. She comes to live with the Frankenstein family, and then Mother Frankenstein dies, and then Victor and his siblings and Elizabeth are all orphans. The Felix and the girl's name escapes me, but the French family, they had their father, but their mother was dead. And so this idea of being motherless, it was not only prevalent in Mary Shelley's life, but it is echoed in Frankenstein. Now, the women in this book are not feminist. Safie is, though, a bit of a feminist because she goes against her father's wishes to come in and be with Felix. That is the type of feminism that Mary Shelley would have espoused. Now, Elizabeth, no feminism. She is so tied in with Victor that her fate rests with his. Now, Mary Shelley herself ran away when she was still Mary Godwin, ran away with Percy when she was about 15 or 16 years old. And he was already married to Harriet, his first wife. And so they lived together, traveling around Europe, and they espoused free love. I don't know how free that love was, but Percy certainly, what is the word I'm looking for? Certainly indulged. Harriet drowned herself, a suicide, and Percy then married Mary. Now, why would Mary want to get married at that point? Especially to give legitimacy to her children. That was a big thing. Regardless of how free-spirited she was, she still wanted the stability of a marriage and stability for her children. Now, other aspects of Mary's life also come into play for the novel, and one of those aspects is that a couple of her children died. Her first child died, was stillborn, and she writes in a letter to a friend of hers that she had a dream that she had taken the baby before the fire and had rubbed it and it had come back to life. So within Mary's world concept, birth and death are intimately entwined. Her mother dies just a couple of weeks after she was born. Her own child dies. Within Frankenstein, the mothers die, and then ultimately other people die as well. So I'm going to stop rambling about Mary Shelley right now, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about the book.